Hello and welcome to SYSTRAcast, the podcast from SYSTRA about all things transport, infrastructure and more. I'm your host Gemma, and today my guest is Gbenga Oludotun, who is our Modern Methods of Construction lead. Hi.
Hi, Trevor. Nice to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. So let's get started first of all. Modern methods of construction, what does that mean?
So, modern methods of construction, or MMC for short, because it's quite a long phrase, is really described as a wide term that covers off-site and on-site construction activities that are different to sort of the norm of constructing various infrastructure assets. So, with off-site, we're looking at moving a lot of the construction activities, a factory setting where it's a much more controlled environment and you have less hazards, less weather prone incidents, and also looking at on-site activities to improve the productivity and make the construction phase much more quicker because no one wants to spend a long time construction. You want to use the asset very quickly, don't you?
Absolutely, yes. So we'll get into some more of the detail. I know you've got some fantastic examples as well to help bring MMC to life for our viewers and listeners. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about your career and how you got to where you are today.
Oh, sure. So I'm a chartered civil engineer. I've got about 17 years of experience in the transport infrastructure space. So my background has been on bridge design. So I've looked at into bridge assessments, bridge inspections, done a lot of new designs as well within Birmingham, primarily in the West Midlands. I came into civil engineering because I had an interest in bridges. I've always been interested in bridges from a very young age. My parents knew that I was going to go into engineering. And because of my background in maths and I was quite good with the sort of technical side, trying to understand how things work. And I also had a feeling that I wanted to leave something behind in the world. Didn't just want to exist and disappear, but wanted to leave a mark in the world. And the civil engineering sort of space helped to do that because what we try to do is improve the society by improving access to economic structures like health, education through the use of transport networks, through the provision of electricity and power generation as well. So all of that comes together to enable society to thrive properly.
It's really interesting how you say you want to leave something behind. That's something so many of my engineering colleagues say as their kind of motivation for getting into the industry, that they want to do something that has a legacy and be part of something that's bigger than themselves.
Absolutely. Because, you look around and you see all the fantastic buildings and structures. They were all done by engineers. You look around Birmingham, city of Birmingham, look at the canals, the Stevensons, the Watts, the Boltons, they designed all these canals and primarily was for economic activity, which also then improved the livelihood of Birmingham as a city as we know today.
Great to see your clear passion really coming through there, Benga, and I'm sure your name will be on that list as one of the great engineers of Birmingham as well. Let's talk a little bit more about your speciality then, modern methods of construction. You told us a bit about what it means. Bring it to life for us. Give us some examples.
So with MMC, just give you a bit of a background and history to it. It came about from the government trying to drive house build and production because we know the target the current government has, and they've accepted that it's not possible with current methods we have to deliver those numbers. So it came about through trying to develop housing projects rapidly and looking at new construction techniques, either a three-dimensional pod in which the whole build room has been fitted out in the factory and is just installed on site in one go, or different elements of the house are brought in sort of flat pack like IKEA and assembled on site. So that's where it sort of developed from. And they have their sort of 7 categories where the first 5 are all about off-site, the other 2 are about sort of on-site. So that thinking then has come into infrastructure space. So with infrastructure, you think in terms of linear assets. So with buildings, you think vertical assets. So they're in one location only. You don't they don't move around. A building's there. But with transport, it's linear. So you're looking at crossing lots of boundaries, lots of different terrains, lots of different obstacles to cross. So bringing MMC into that space, it's a different challenge completely. And So my role is to try to identify the most efficient way through all the various contractual, commercial mechanisms to make that happen. And that's through speaking with clients, understanding where the pain points are. Primarily, currently, it's all about cost, but also they're much more about the sustainable elements of the designs themselves, of the assets themselves, how they'll perform over the life of the assets. It's not just, oh, how much is it going to cost to build now, but how much is it going to cost to run as well? And thinking in terms of how the various elements fit together and can be easily changed or swapped in the future without having to resort to massive closures of roads, for example, to replace a bridge, or to shut down a whole power plant to replace certain elements. You try to modularize it. So you look at how the asset itself can be standardized, can be modularized. You can swap out elements without affecting the whole. So it has to do with collaboration as well, because as a designer, I'm just part of the entire network that comes together, or enterprise that comes together to deliver the asset. You have the client there, you have the contractors, you have specialist SMEs, you have designers as well, all coming together to understand what the outcome of the asset is meant to deliver. So MMC6, not just to look at the construction phase, but also the operational phase of the asset. And to do that, we need to start at the very onset of the sort of the optionary phase to think about what is the asset, what is it meant to do, and how can we construct it efficiently to enable the maintenance to be easy as well. So that's how it sort of works and pulls together.
You mentioned about collaboration and connection there with colleagues, with the client, understanding their kind of needs and pain points, but you've also clearly got a very focused approach to the outcomes as well. And what does this mean? It's not only about the cost savings and the time savings, but the sustainability angle and the ongoing benefits as well. Just to pick up a little bit more on that collaborative approach, we spoke to our colleague Llewellyn on the podcast recently, all about his role as head of innovation, very much about bringing people together to challenge each other, different perspectives and different ideas. That sounds like it's a big part of the MMC world as well.
Absolutely, because not everyone, not a single person has all the answers, and you need to be as open and search as widely as possible to find the most efficient solution in. So, I mean, for example, when you're trying to construct a bridge, I'll use a bridge for example, if the terrain is not um, easy enough to construct the normal way, then you think about, right, if we construct the bridge a few meters away from where it's meant to be, then how do we then move it into place? So you then speak with suppliers like Mahmood Heavy Lifters, who mainly do sort of oil rigs. That's the sort of where they come from. But within the civil engineering space, they're sort of seen there's a market for moving bridges around. So they just bring their expertise in, and we have a conversation about what's the most efficient way using the equipment they have to move the bridge safely and install it as it should be placed. So that's just a sort of typical example of how collaboration really comes to play. You really need to speak to people, you know.
That sounds like a phenomenal thing, and I know, on the HS2 project at the moment, there's a lot of assets now coming to life, and we're seeing a lot of those bridge pushes with assets being moved into place. It's absolutely phenomenal. How does it feel when you've designed an asset or part of a structure, and you've worked on it for however long that's taken to refine the designs and so on? How does that feel to see something brought to life in front of your eyes?
I think that's why we're engineers, really. It's really, it's that feeling. It's something I've been trying to describe and trying to tell people about. But you have a sense of pride. You have a sense of satisfaction, a sense of, yeah, everything I imagined, everything I drew on a piece of paper is right in front of me, and it's going exactly as I thought it was going to go, and it's been put in place, and it's going to serve the purpose for which myself and the team designed it for. So it's a satisfaction and the pride, I think, that really comes into mind.
And the other thing that with pretty much every engineer I've ever spoken to, those who have children, bore the kids to absolute, insanity. I worked on that. I designed that every time they kind of drive past one as well, and it's that legacy element as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. I've taken my parents to see actually my first designed and built bridge in Birmingham, over at Dogpool Lane. And it was quite a bit of a problem for me to show them, yeah, that's what I did. And a few of my friends joke around that they will avoid the bridges I built, but those are friends. So.
That's what friends are for, right? Yeah, fantastic. And I know you, Benga, you're also incredibly keen and so passionate about encouraging the next generation and giving back to the wider industry as well. You're one of our colleagues here at SYSTRA who gets involved in kind of giving presentations and attending talks and so on. Why is that an important part of being an engineer?
So I think when I became qualified as a civil engineer, I looked back and I saw all those that supported me to get to that point. And I felt if they weren't there, I wouldn't be where I am. So I felt compelled. I felt that it was the right thing to do to also support the next generation. So I don't just support the next generation of engineers through the Institution of Civil Engineers as a supervising civil engineer, but I also go into sort of primary schools and secondary schools to talk to them about a career in civil engineering. And I must say that I prefer the primary school students. They're really, really energetic and fun. But I speak to them about what I do. I tell them about the different career opportunities, tell them how open the um, career is in civil engineering, the different places you can work, not just bridges, but ground engineering, tunnels, seaports, airports, literally anywhere in the world you want to go, you can work as a civil engineer. And beyond that, it's really trying to help the society, because if we don't have engineers in future, then a lot of infrastructure will break down. And if that breaks down, the society will break down, and then we'll be back to the dark ages. So we need to have that pipeline of talent coming through. And it's not just the boys. I speak to a lot of girls and females and tell them that engineering is not just for boys, that it's a career that they can thrive in, because a lot of the sort of female engineers I've come across in my career are phenomenal, and they stand out. So I always encourage them to do that. And I did create a sort of a Minecraft activity a while ago, to sort of explain to kids what I do and how I do it through the game. Because with Minecraft, they build stuff within a sandbox. And I tell them, or rather, I challenge them to build a bridge or a tunnel or whatever, and explain to them that the process that they're going through to do all that is basically what we do as engineers. So I think it sort of connects to them exactly how they can see the future in engineering.
Picking up a little bit more on the future and sustainability, it's a really core driver of all the work we do here at SYSTRA, and you've touched on the benefits that modern methods of construction can have in that respect. Talk to us a little bit more about things like how modern methods of construction can reduce carbon impacts.
So with sustainability, a lot of people think straight away carbon reduction, but it's a whole lot more than that. It goes beyond just carbon calculation or carbon accounting. You're looking at the environment, you're looking at the environmental impact, you're looking at the environmental footprint, you're looking at how the construction process can minimize impact to the environment it's built in. And what MMC is bringing in is reducing the footprint of construction, it's reducing the impact it has on the biodiversity of the area. So you don't have to take more land than you need to build an asset that is, much smaller. So MMC, because it's a factory environment, all the elements are constructed offsite, and the only activity on site should be assembling and pulling it together, which should minimize the footprint. But to touch on carbon, because again, the factory environment is there, you're able to then test new materials, use new materials that ordinarily on an open construction site might not be able to. For example, glulam timber. You can use that in the factory environment, controlled environment, understand how to protect it before it's taken out the site. You can use elements like fiber reinforced polymer to in place of concrete, which gives you a lighter structure. With a lighter structure, you use less heavy foundations. With less heavy foundations, less digging. So it all sort of adds up as you build along with that.
And again, this then requires the involvement not just of people who are, MMC leads or kind of experts or have a particular interest in that area. There's opportunities and the need then, isn't there, for you to be working with your colleagues from all sorts of different disciplines across the business?
Absolutely, because in a multidisciplinary environment, you need to speak to everybody. Literally, because the ground engineers can't do it all by themselves because they are focused on the ground. They don't look at the structure, as it were, but the structure itself can't stand without having a foundation and the ground support it. And likewise, the sort of drainage system on the structure, be it a bridge, be it a building, you need to look at the mechanicals and electricals and the plumbing systems to make sure the asset works as it's designed to. And each of those disciplines impact on each other. So that's why the digital element is really quite keen. You're bringing in BIM and trying to reduce clashes in the digital space. So we try to encourage building the asset digitally first, looking through all the clashes, looking through all the challenges, understanding how it's going to be built in the digital space, sometimes using 4D BIM as well to understand where all the various construction equipment will be, where people are going to be, how things are going to be constructed. For example, if you have a beam, but you don't know where the connection or how a hand is going to reach that connection. On paper, it looks straightforward, but then you put it in a 3D environment and then you understand, oh, there's not enough space to get around there. So that flags up the hazard and that improves the sort of health and safety of the construction phase and also operational phase as well, because then you look at how what elements be changed if they have to be changed in future. So that's how it all sort of ties in and pulls together.
It's clearly an incredibly forward-thinking and rapidly developing area. What do you think comes next in the world of modern methods of construction? As these, people who hopefully you're encouraging into the industry as school children and apprentices and graduates, where do you think they're going to take things?
That's a very interesting point because the phrase modern methods construction turns people off the wrong way because they're like, hang on, offset construction has been around for ages, more than 50, 100 years. It's not modern, it's not new. And there's been a sort of change or such a shift in industry into referring to industrialized construction or product-led construction as well. But the essence is we're trying to improve the construction process to be much more efficient, much more productive. That's all we're trying to drive at. So the name, I'm not too hung up on it. But then with those coming in, it's a really exciting time because with the digital technologies coming through, we have the opportunity to now bring in things like augmented reality, to bring in unmanned aerial vehicles, to bring in um, automated, connected autonomous vehicles, CAVs, to really start designing for robots and looking at how we as humans can work with robots on construction sites, because you don't want to bring in robots and then introduce more hazards. You're trying to reduce the hazards as much as possible because paramount is safety. That's the very first thing in any construction. You want to ensure you build something and you don't hurt anybody in that process. So how do we then bring in all this technology to support that drive? So with the kids coming in, they have a lot of programming skills, so they're able to design for machines, and I think that's a skill that will be required in the future.
It sounds super varied, super interesting. Is there such a thing then as a typical day as SYSTRA's modern methods of construction lead? What does it look like when you get up in the morning and come to work?
I wish there were typical days. That would be great. No, each day is quite different. Like for example, today I was at a workshop with one of our disciplines to look at digital ways of improving the processes. So I could be in workshops, I could be in client meetings, I could be meeting contractors, I could be meeting specialist contractors, I could be meeting SMEs who are offering sort of different carbon-friendly materials, who are offering a different way of constructing elements like 3D printed assets, for example. So it's quite varied, and sometimes a bit like, hang on, why are there so many things here? But I think it comes back to that collaboration because if you build your network of the supply network of who can do what, then you're better able to provide an answer to a client when they have specific challenges around cost, sustainability, quality, or program challenges. You're better able to then synthesize all these various supplies you've been in touch with to know, right, how best can we work together to achieve the aim of the client? Because it all comes back to how do we achieve what the client wants? Because what the client wants is what the society is looking for, and that's the whole point of the construction process.
And some days we even get to come and do a podcast as well.
Absolutely.
Those are the best days, I reckon. Gbenga, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you today, find out a little bit more about modern methods of construction and your work. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Gemma.
And thank you to you all for tuning in. As always, you can stay in touch with SYSTRA outside of our podcasts. You'll find us on social media. And of course, we've got a website as well where you can sign up to our monthly newsletter. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you again soon.